everybody, this is Gregory with how I lost over 100 pounds and have kept it off for 30 plus years, where there should be no hesitance in your weight loss and in your weight maintenance. Today we're going to continue reflections of a weight loss warrior and talk about my exercise regime during college. Now before we begin, if you need help with weight loss, contact me through the Clarity FM link found here in the episode notes. Also check out my courses and my books and my website, and if you appreciate my content, there is a like button. Hit the like, hit the notification button, and if you really like it, there is a button and link for PayPal. You can make a little donation. All right, so again, ideally you watch these in order. We're in college now, 1 year after I've lost my weight. I am regular weighted, but I am eating horribly. As I mentioned in the previous episode, I am essentially starving myself during the week and then binging on the weekend. What was my exercise like? Well, my exercise, as I mentioned in the last episode of Confessions of an Obese Child when I lost my weight, most of that time I was doing the Stairmaster because I was so fat. I would just hold myself up and just have my legs move up and down. But I mean, it helped. It helped me lose weight. By the time I was in college, and I did the Stairmaster my senior year in high school after I had lost my weight. By the time in college, that's when I picked up running. I didn't really run in high school, but I started running in college. I remember having a Bally's. I don't know if they still have these. Bally's Club. There was one maybe 10 minutes from my university, and I had an indoor track, and I live in Texas, so you could see the merits of that. So I would run in there, and it was great. I love running, and I still do. I still run an indoor track. Luckily, I have a gym now, it's 30 years later, that has an indoor track, and I haven't always lived in a place that's had indoor tracks, because I'm not a big treadmill guy, and we'll talk about this later another time. But I would run there, and so I remember running, and it's pretty much been the same. My whole life is 50-minute runs, like 5-mile runs. Never been the fastest runner. I think there's on times on treadmills, when I do run on treadmills, and I'm not a big fan of treadmills, I can maybe do an 8-minute mile for 5 miles. But as a whole, when I'm running indoors, it's always been, and it's not like I have like a journal or a journal log from 30 years ago, what were my run times. But I'm sure back then I was counting, and I still do this, guys. It's so goofy. People have fitness watches and all these that track your mileage. When I run my indoor track, it's 10 times for a mile. And so every time I pass the entrance, I have my hand out. So like when I'm running like this, because I'm trying to keep count. So I'm sure I was keeping count back then. And I would run for 50 minutes. And I just loved running more than I liked the Stairmaster. And I noticed throughout the last 30 years that when I'm doing more elliptical than more running, that's a bad sign. Because elliptical, as much as I crank up the wattage to 20, I'm like 18, 19, 20 on the watt, so it's really heavy and I'm sweating. It's just not as rigorous as running. And running is good for your joints, so I mean, as long as you're not doing like ultra running and so forth. But either way, I would run with my shirt. Now, I remember there was an outdoor track out in my university, and I sometimes, for whatever reason, I would be running there. Maybe the gym was closed, and I would not run without my shirt. And this was a common phenomenon for 15 years. And again, I'm regular weighted. I do have the stretch marks and the bloopy, which we'll talk about later on. But I still felt like a fat guy in a regular weighted body. And even though these people in college, none of these people in college knew me in high school. So none of these people in college knew I was fat when I was younger, unless I told them. And I probably told some friends. They probably could have guessed by the stretch marks and the bloopy. But still, again, it was like a clean slate. But you carry these things on. I talk about in, I think, Confessions 2, about my panic attacks and how even after I had lost my weight, my panic attacks continued into graduate school, which we'll talk about later, in PhD school, where I wouldn't speak. And if I did speak, I'd have these sweat attacks in class, and I'd have to get out and then pad off everywhere. My clothes are all wet, and then I'd go back in and I'd start sweating again because I thought people were looking at me, or maybe they were, maybe they weren't, and then I'd go back out. It was just a nightmare. So it's like all this baggage and that you carry from your formative traumatic years. I still had it. So like the takeaway is, if some of you guys, I think it's different when this stuff happens to you during your formative years. Like if you were regular weighted in your adolescence and 20s, and let's say you've gained 50 pounds in your 30s, and then you lose the 50 pounds, I don't think you'd go through the same thing that I went through, because it didn't happen in your formative years. But this was a reoccurring thing you're going to hear in these reflections episodes through my 20s, was just this, there was this separation, this chasm, this estrangement between my mind and my body. And in my mind, I knew I had lost the weight because I was wearing size 34. I knew it, but I still felt like a fat piece of crap in my head, even though I was getting external reinforcement that I was not that, in terms of girls and in terms of no one was bullying me, making fun of me or anything like that. I still felt that way. And it took me a long time to stop feeling that way. So in college, as I mentioned, I was binging, starving. My workouts though, I mean, that was a time where, again, the petrifying fear of gaining the weight back really pushed this through most of my 20s. I would run 37 days in a row. I mean, it was just like there was no chance that there would be a day that I would not work out, or if I couldn't work out, I'd be upset. Because I think I got addicted to the endorphin high, but most it's because, again, I was doing calorie in, calorie out, and I needed a way to do calorie out. And as I mentioned in the episode 7 personal things about me, I've never intentionally vomited or done laxatives or diet pills or surgeries or anything like that. But it was the petrifying fear that I had to work out every day. And so I luckily didn't have any injuries during this time, but it was like every day it was the same, calorie in or starvation in. And that was the thing, like Monday to Friday when I was starving myself, I knew this was the time, because I would still be running 5 miles a day and doing the steam room, that this was the time I was supposed to catch up for the binge eating that I did on the weekend. And I remember like binge eating and then going to run in the afternoon, and if you guys have done that, you're running or you're doing cardio and you feel the food coming up your esophagus. It was horrible, but I would run, of course, I would run on the days that I was binging. And it was just this horrible prison that I was in. So it was kind of like the canary in the gilded cage, right? Because outwardly, things seemed great. College is probably the best time of your life in a lot of ways, because you have more freedom than you did in high school, but less responsibility than you do as an adult. And so on one level, I'm like this, everything's great, but deep down, I'm a slave to the food, to the binging, and all these disordered acts. Guys, post in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Please hit the like, notification button. Until next time, take care, God bless, and pray.